Let's dive right into this explainer and validate a struggle we absolutely all face. Why your brain's ancient hardware is completely bottlenecked by our modern attention-engineered world. We've all been there, right? You sit down to do some deep work, and literally 5 minutes later, you're checking your phone, opening another browser tab, or suddenly feeling this urgent, undeniable need to organize your desk. Look, you aren't lazy, and you don't lack discipline. What you're experiencing is cognitive overload. It's a systemic mismatch between how human attention actually evolved and the digital environment we have to navigate every single day. To practice what we preach and keep your cognitive load nice and light right off the bat, here is our roadmap for how we're going to diagnose and treat this condition today. We'll cover the modern overwhelm epidemic, your brain's hardware limits, the multitasking myth, why we actually procrastinate, and finally, strategies to reclaim focus. Okay, part 1. The modern overwhelm epidemic. If you've recently read the exact same sentence 3 times without absorbing a single word, or walked into a room and completely forgot why you were there, you are suffering from this environmental mismatch. Just look at the stark contrast in these numbers. We are consuming 340 times more raw data today than we did back in 1990. Think about that. Back then, a typical workday meant interacting with maybe one computer program at a time and fielding about 40 emails. Fast forward to today, you're dealing with well over 120 emails, you're jumping between overlapping, algorithmically optimized apps around 300 times a day, and your brain is forced to process roughly 34 gigabytes of data. You are literally processing more information before lunch today than someone in 1990 encountered in an entire week. And then there's this number, 35,000. That is the staggering number of daily micro-decisions you make right now. From which tab to click, to which notification to clear away, to what show to put on in the background. Compare that to just 3,000 to 5,000 decisions 3 decades ago. The decision density of modern life has just intensified on a massive, unprecedented scale. Moving to part 2, your brain's hardware limits. To really grasp why this environment breaks us down, we need to look under the hood at our neurobiological constraints. Because your brain is an absolute marvel, but it has very strict limits. The most critical bottleneck is your working memory. This is your brain's temporary workspace. It can only hold about 4 meaningful chunks of information at once, and those chunks completely fade within 15 to 30 seconds unless you actively rehearse them in your head. Think of working memory not like a computer hard drive that just stores data passively, but more like a heavy basketball you have to keep dribbling. Every single notification, every buzz in your pocket is a defender aggressively trying to steal that ball. When we look at cognitive load theory, we see that not all mental effort is created equal. You've got intrinsic load, which is just the natural complexity of whatever task you're doing. Then there's germane load. That's the good, productive effort that helps you learn things and build neural pathways. But then there's extraneous load. This is the completely unnecessary mental burden caused by poor design. Think autoplaying videos, cluttered interfaces, or pinging notifications. Since these loads all add up together, the extraneous load from our digital clutter easily pushes us way past our working memory's absolute limit of 4 chunks. And boom, you've got total cognitive overload and brain fog. What's really fascinating here is the role of your prefrontal cortex. Research from Dr. Adam Gazzale shows how it acts as a bouncer, or like a flight controller, for our intentional top-down goals. But here's the catch. This system crashes incredibly easily when it's flooded with bottom-up distractions. See, our brains evolved to prioritize novel stimuli. Back in the day, a sudden noise meant a predator might be nearby. So when your phone buzzes, your ancient hardware instinctively reacts with bottom-up attention. The bouncer gets overwhelmed, and the flight controller completely loses track of the planes. Let's jump into part 3, the multitasking myth. It's time to debunk one of the biggest illusions of the modern workplace, the idea that we can effectively juggle multiple streams of information at once. Research actually reveals that you can lose up to 40% of your total productivity when you attempt to multitask. 40%! Why? Because your brain isn't actually doing cognitive tasks simultaneously. Unless it's a deeply ingrained physical habit like walking, your prefrontal cortex can only attend to one mental activity at a time. What you are actually doing is rapidly and exhaustingly switching between tasks, and every single switch carries a heavy penalty in both time and accuracy. This brings us to a crucial phenomenon called attention residue. When you switch from writing a report to checking your email, your brain doesn't just cleanly close out the first file. Fragments of that unfinished task actually stay behind, continuing to occupy your mental resources. Studies show it takes an average of 23 minutes to fully regain your focus after an interruption. So that quote-unquote quick 30-second check of your inbox, it actually costs you nearly half an hour of diminished cognitive capacity. So that begs a really important question. If multitasking ruins our productivity and exhausts us this much, why do 95% of us still constantly do it? Well, because we aren't just fighting bad habits, we are fighting highly sophisticated systems. You are essentially up against slot machine psychology. Every platform is engineered by behavioral psychologists to hijack your brain's reward centers. You get a little hit of dopamine, that anticipation chemical, every single time you swipe or click. They use unpredictable, variable reward schedules, meaning you literally never know when the next exciting piece of info will drop, and that keeps you hooked. Add in the infinite scroll, which removes the natural stopping points your brain desperately needs to say, okay, I'm done, and you've got a perfect trap. This easy, unpredictable dopamine makes cheap distractions way more appealing to your energy-conserving brain than doing mentally expensive deep work. Which leads us to part 4, why we actually procrastinate. This is perhaps the most universally misunderstood symptom of cognitive overload. The scale of this issue has just exploded over the years. Back in the 1970s, only about 5% of adults were considered chronic procrastinators. Today, up to 25% of the global population falls into that category. Something fundamental has clearly shifted in how we work and live. This is a massive paradigm shift, so listen closely. Procrastination functions primarily as an emotion regulation problem rather than a time management deficit. You are not lazy. You're just using procrastination as a coping strategy to avoid the dread, the boredom, or the anxiety associated with a hard task. Your brain is prioritizing short-term mood repair, basically giving in to feel good right now at a massive cost to your future self. Psychologists break this down into 3 distinct types. There's arousal procrastination, where you delay things just to get that adrenaline rush from a looming deadline. There's avoidant procrastination, which stems from a fear of failure or being judged. And then decisional procrastination, where you delay simply to avoid the massive cognitive load of making a choice. Whatever type you lean toward, this emotional avoidance is highly correlated with low conscientiousness. And the grand irony? It actually doubles your stress levels. It gives you a tiny bit of immediate relief, but it massively compounds your long-term anxiety. Okay, part 5, strategies to reclaim focus. Now that we've accurately diagnosed the condition as an environmental mismatch combined with an emotion regulation problem, let's explore the science-backed treatments to actually fix it. Since we can't exactly upgrade our evolutionary hardware, we have to change our environment. The very first step is to ruthlessly eliminate extraneous load. Turn off all non-essential notifications right now. Second, start batch processing your communication. Check your email or your Slack at set, designated times instead of letting them constantly interrupt your flow. Third, practice cognitive offloading. Your brain is a terrible storage device, so transfer your thoughts, tasks, and appointments to an external system that you actually trust. And finally, use intentional time blocking. Schedule specific blocks for deep work and treat them like non-negotiable doctor's appointments. You also need to implement the 80-20 rule. Recognize that just 20% of your tasks yield 80% of your impact. We have to stop equating being busy with being effective. Identify your single most demanding, important task and do it first thing in the day. Knocking that out early drastically lowers the background anxiety that usually drives you toward emotional avoidance and destructive multitasking later in the afternoon. But listen, you also have to deliberately build in recovery. Your prefrontal cortex desperately needs blank spaces to integrate information. That means staring out a window, going for a walk in nature for some gentle stimulation, or just sitting quietly. And perhaps most importantly, practice mindfulness to train your attention. Remember the story of the expert meditator with 30 years of experience? When asked how long he could hold his focus without his mind drifting, his answer was about 7 seconds. Even experts lose focus. Distraction is entirely natural. The goal of mindfulness isn't to achieve perfect focus forever. It's to train yourself to catch that wandering mind and bounce right back without harsh self-criticism. Give your ancient brain some self-compassion. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final provocative question to ask yourself today. Are you intentionally managing your attention, or are you letting algorithms manage it for you? I highly challenge you to conduct a personal cognitive load audit today. Step off the grid, even just for an hour, to reset your baseline, and take the first crucial steps to finally reclaim your mind from the attention economy. Thanks for joining us for this one, and we'll catch you in the next explainer.